This is a code name that we've given them, and they are somebody within Lucasfilm / Disney that I've met personally. I've confirmed their identity. I've confirmed who they are. I've confirmed their ability to access this level of information.
Kamran Pasha is a con artist. Kamran Pasha made an imaginary source called Sparrow. On today's episode of The Sparrow Files, we'll take a bigger look at the major scoops Sparrow has reported, and you'll see just how ridiculous Kamran Pasha's con is. I'm Darth Melvin, leader of the Knights of Melvin, and this is The Sparrow Files. We've already gone over briefly some of the absurdities coming from Kamran's Patreon. One of them is recycling the old story, Kathleen Kennedy is being fired.
The first introduction I had to Sparrow was last fall when they reached out and they had details of the severance package. And they had said that the severance package, which they claim to have seen themselves, came out to, depending on how the stock price is factored, came out to about $25 to $30 million. And a lot of it's going to be in stock options and things. But that's a pretty large payout. It's similar to what Bob Chapek apparently got, right?
Kamran's very first interaction with Sparrow included details of Kathleen Kennedy's severance package. We are 1 year removed, and Kathleen Kennedy is still at the company. But Kamran's Patreon is not just about Kathleen Kennedy and shilling for Disney Star Wars. He pushes other wild theories. In November 2022, CEO Bob Chapek was fired from Disney. Kamran used the ancient Pasha method of storytelling, and another lie was born.
Over the past few days, we have been given the official narrative of former Disney CEO Bob Chapek's fall from grace. The problem is, it doesn't make sense. The official narrative being peddled to us, the new Disney leadership, is spin, and poorly thought out spin for that matter. The trouble is, the facts, as we have them, don't make any sense either, at least as discrete units without a thread to connect them all. What we need is a grand unified field theory that brings them all together into a cohesive narrative, and that is what I am going to do here. Let me present to you the Pasha theory of Chapek's downfall.
Firstly, he accuses Leslie Headland of faking a photo shoot to make it appear she is working on the greenlit show The Acolyte. He claims she wasn't on set, she was at Galaxy's Edge. Next, Sean Levy's unnamed Star Wars movie is brought up.
Both of these suggest panic inside Lucasfilm, and as a source who spoke with someone at Lucasfilm told me, the panic had been precipitated by a very ugly conversation between Bob Chapek and Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy.
The stock fell 13%, there was a hiring freeze, Margot Robbie's Pirates of the Caribbean was canceled. This is a take from the Wall Street Journal.
On Sunday night, Walt Disney Company decided to replace its chief executive, Bob Chapek, with his predecessor, Robert Iger. 2 weeks ago, after the company reported pretty dismal fourth quarter earnings, there was a general sense that financially the company was not doing well. My sources are telling me that not only was it the earnings that alarmed the board of directors, but also Mr. Chapek's tone on the phone call with investors. The division that includes Disney Plus, which is called direct-to-consumer streaming, has lost more than $8.5 billion since Disney Plus was launched in late 2019. And investors hear that and they look at that and they say, well, wait a minute, how on earth are you going to get to profitability? And there was real sense, I think, among investors that he wasn't really being straight with them.
Seems reasonable. To put it simply, Chapek sucked as a CEO. Disney was losing money, and the board had no confidence in him going forward. But Kamran Pasha, using the ancient Pasha method of storytelling, didn't want to accept that narrative. He needed a greater reason for why the board wanted Chapek out. He said it had something to do with the dates between November 9th and 20th.
My theory is that Disney was invested in FTX and that the collapse of the fraudulent exchange has brought the company into existential financial crisis. I believe Disney CFO Christian McCarthy embroiled the company in FTX without Chapek's knowledge and likely on the behest of board members and woke capital firms such as BlackRock, which hold significant shares in Disney. And when Bob Chapek found out what she had done, McCarthy had no choice but to ask the board to remove him before they were all held accountable for the disaster. If I am correct, the inexplicable removal of Bob Chapek is part of the criminal cover-up that is one of the biggest scandals in Hollywood history.
Is anyone shocked that this would be what happened? If there was a cryptocurrency they were going to get involved in, it would be FTX?
But if I am right, how can this scandal be kept from the public? Well, the first thing that needs to be done is make sure that Disney is not revealed in court filings to have any stake in FTX. And yesterday, it was announced that the bankruptcy court has permitted large investors who lost money in FTX to remain anonymous. But even with this legal cover, a fraud of this scale cannot be kept hidden forever, especially if Disney's cash flow has been severely impacted. So what would the board do to solve this crisis? The only option would be to sell the company in order to keep Disney afloat.
Bah, don't worry about any of them going to jail, because Chapek isn't a rat. He has an NDA.
It's like, all right, I got $23 million, but now I'm being accused of criminal malfeasance. Do I hold my NDA and protect, or do I protect my reputation and myself from actual criminal liability? I don't know that Chapek is going to stay silent forever. I think
an NDA has nothing to do with criminal activity. That's the thing.
Correct.
He could say something in the courts and still be protected without violating the NDA.
How do you get an retirement? I don't get it. He's got shit for brains.
A few days later, Kamran addressed the Wall Street Journal. It was reported that under Chapek, budgets were shifted so they wouldn't be counted against Disney Plus. This way, it would seem like Disney Plus is losing less money on original content. This is one of the many things CFO Christine McCarthy or an investor would be concerned about. Kamran denies this being the truth, suggests there has to be more to the story, and that Disney actually planted this story at the Wall Street Journal. This was done so to cover up the fact that FTX is the real problem. And of course, this has to be real because Stephanie Janicek is behind it.
The more I think about this, the more I believe this theory is the case.
I almost think I might get a phone call or an email from Disney Legal saying cease and desist from making these things. So I'm stating this is speculation. This is just me as a human being looking at all the data points that you're releasing publicly, and the only theory that connects all the data points to me is you got caught in FTX, you're all in trouble, you need to sell this company to Apple and cover it up, and you need to silence Bob Chapek and put the blame on him so that you don't go to jail. That is my theory.
Now, the major thing about Kamran's FTX theory is that it is Kamran's FTX theory. However, the FTX theory conveniently and perfectly aligns with other scoops from Sparrow. Another one of Kamran's major claims is The Acolyte is a fake show. November 7th, 2022, he posts.
Yes, I saw the new Acolyte is supposedly greenlit. I say supposedly because it still doesn't make any sense. And the fact that Leslie Headland is supposedly directing its pilot episode is even more bizarre. Headland's directing experience is comically minimal, with a couple of small indie films a decade ago no one has ever heard of.
December 11th, 2022.
As many members of the Patreon are asking about what is happening with Leslie Headland, here is the Pasha theory of The Acolyte. The show is not officially greenlit by Disney. Kathleen Kennedy and Leslie Headland are continuing their efforts to bullshit their way into getting a green light by creating a PR narrative that the show is a go. They are financing a cheap pilot using Lucasfilm development funds in order to present to Bob Iger a template for what the series could be if he greenlights it and gives them the money. Because Headland is using Lucasfilm discretionary funds, which are limited, the quality for the production design is lacking. Her desperate hope is that she can keep the grift going for a few more months while Kennedy tries to strong-arm Iger into greenlighting the show and giving them a budget in the 50 to 100 million range so that she can reshoot the shoebox pilot and make it look good. The more likely outcome is that Headland finishes the pilot, it looks bad, and Iger denies the show a full season. Thus, it is shelved and never ends up on Disney+. So what do you all think of the latest Pasha theory?
Notice how this is another Pasha theory, like FTX was. But on January 25th, Sparrow is getting involved with Kamran's theory. And of course, Sparrow is supporting it.
The eye of Pasha is gazing down on the Acolyte and it burns through the veil of bullshit surrounding this project. Some of you were concerned about an article that appeared in The Hollywood Reporter this morning, where the alleged star Amanda Stenberg was interviewed about her involvement in this alleged series. I turned to our source Sparrow inside Disney. This is what they had to say. The Acolyte is not being spun up in-house yet, no sets have been booked, and no locations have been scouted. Also, Carrie-Ann Moss, supposedly the lead of the show, has seminars booked with her lifestyle brand for all February and March at least. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors, which in this town is saying something.
It's interesting coming from Sparrow. No sets have been booked. No locations have been scouted. This is just a sizzle reel. Forbes reported that Disney spent $49.2 million on pre-production for The Acolyte. How did they know this? They looked on the financial statements of Bluestockings UK Limited, the company that is producing The Acolyte. And these financial statements were audited. In our opinion, the financial statements give a true and fair view of the state of the company's affairs as at September 24th, 2022, and on its profit for the period then ended, have been properly prepared in accordance with United Kingdom generally accepted accounting practice, and have been prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Companies Act 2006. So Safri Champness LLP says the financial statements are good, but Sparrow has something different to say.
Sparrow was able to track a couple of 50,000 euro play payments that are credited. Again, the Sparrow's in a position that they are able to know what's in the books. And Sparrow told me I can find 2 entries for 50,000 euros recently for filming in Europe, for some scenes for The Acolyte, not for a whole show, but 50,000 euros will get you a couple of days worth of work. I mean, this is a show like that's going to cost millions of euros.
Right. Perhaps Cameron needs to get his own guy in there to check out these books.
20 million deposited at Money Bank Zurich upon proof of Queen's death?
Cameron would tell you that the financial statements are fake, that the auditors were bought, and you need to have faith in Sparrow that there was some major fraud going on. One of the angles Cameron tried to use was Karen McCarthy agreed to become the producer of The Acolyte in April 2022. She turned down an offer from Apple, and 2 weeks later, Lucasfilm wanted out of the deal. They offered her only $5,000, which is a joke, and this resulted in a lawsuit. Breaching contract, bad faith denial of an agreement, and seeking statutory penalties. Cameron tried to use the very low $5,000 offer as evidence that The Acolyte is a fake show. If this wasn't a sizzle reel, why didn't they make a bigger offer? This is just very flawed logic coming from someone who is a master of the ancient Pasha method of storytelling. Most importantly, this is easily debunked by looking at the financial statements for Bluestockings UK Limited. Cameron chose to dig himself an even deeper hole.
Attorneys for Karen McCarthy, the executive producer who is suing Lucasfilm for being dropped from the non-existent show The Acolyte, reached out to me, Kamran Pasha, to discuss what I know. I guess they heard about my booming Patreon and my Sparrow contact. They felt it was crucial to their legal case to talk to the finest screenwriter in Hollywood. Kamran Pasha, Kamran Pasha, I spoke with Robert E. Allen, who is senior partner at the law firm Glazer Weil, and is representing Miss McCarthy. Much of our conversation was confidential, and Mr. Allen revealed to me some shocking details as to what happened to Miss McCarthy that are not yet in the public record. As a former attorney myself, I do not want to jeopardize the legal case, so I will have to keep those details private for now. But I will say that McCarthy's attorneys are dedicated to uncovering the truth of what is really going on with this mysterious production. And he indicated that nothing makes sense about the public claims Leslie Headland has made about the show and the reality of how Miss McCarthy was treated and how Disney has responded to her complaint. Mr. Allen said if what my Disney sources are claiming is true, that this show is nothing more than a glorified sizzle reel being put together on a shoestring budget. It would be the biggest scandal in Hollywood, and his litigation team is committed to exposing the truth. So for the Lucasfilm spies who are reading this right now, it's officially time to panic.
I took a deeper look into this and found an article at that Park Place. They did some investigative journalism and reached out to Robert Allen. Mr. Robert Allen was kind enough to call me while he was working remotely from home on Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. He corroborated that he had spoken with someone on the day of April 5th, but he could not recall if the person was Kamran Pasha. He said he didn't remember that name.
So what's the topic of discussion?
I've been hired by Darth Melvin to investigate the disappearance of Robert Allen.
I see, yeah. Robert's disappearance, yeah.
So it's nothing that official. I just have some basic questions about Robert Allen and yourself.
Did he invest in FTX?
No, actually, he hasn't. Some cash was missing, his car was gone, so was some luggage, that's it.
No one is dealing with the homicide squad yet or anything, right?
No, not yet. As I said, we're not sure. Basically, no one's seen or heard anything.
So typical, isn't it?
Just strange. One day someone's walking around, going to work, alive, and then
Nothing.
people just disappear.
Hollywood just opens up and swallows them.
Eerie. Really eerie.
Listen, you'll have to excuse me. I have a lunch meeting with Michael Winkler at Four Seasons in 20 minutes.
He did not corroborate that he had reached out or called anyone on April 5th in the way suggested by reporting from the Patreon accounts. According to Pasha, the conversation was very noteworthy, so I was surprised he didn't remember Pasha's name.
Do you remember where you were the night you talked with Robert Allen on the phone, which was on the 5th of April?
God, I guess I was probably posting on my Patreon. I had a date with a girl named Stephanie Janisek.
That's not what I got. That's not the information I've received.
Well, I wait. What information have you received?
Mr. Allen said that if what my Disney sources are claiming is true, that this show is nothing more than a glorified sizzle reel being put together on a shoestring budget. It would be the biggest scandal in Hollywood. Surely Mr. Allen would recall the person giving him info that would constitute the biggest scandal in Hollywood. I read this quote to Mr. Allen verbatim and asked him to confirm it if it was accurate. Mr. Allen stated that he would not have said that and does not remember saying anything that could be construed in such a way.
How about lunch in a week or so when I've sorted out this information?
Great, yes, I'd like that.
And if you could try to pin down where you were the night of Robert Allen's disappearance, it would make my job a lot easier.
Absolutely, I'm with you on that one.
Huey Lewis and the Sparrow. Great stuff. I just bought it on my way here. You heard it?
Never. I mean, I don't really like sparrows.
Not a big music fan, huh?
No, I like music, just there. Huey is too eccentric for me.
To each his own.
Doesn't remember Kamran Pasha. Denied saying the Acolyte is a sizzle reel in a big Hollywood scandal. And it's also interesting that Mr. Allen used the term sizzle reel when that is the same term that Cameron has been throwing around in his Patreon. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Personally, I think the guy went a little nuts, so split town for a while. Maybe he did go to London, sightseeing, drinking, whatever. Anyway, I'm pretty sure he'll turn up sooner or later. I mean, to think a Hollywood screenwriter made up a fake conversation and killed him to cover it up would be too ridiculous. Isn't that right, Cameron?
The Acolyte is not the only project that isn't happening. The Rey movie isn't happening either.
Is Rey returning to Star Wars? A source response. My personal opinion, based on analyzing Star Wars with a pretty good track record for the past 5 years, is that Rey is finished. There is no economic reason whatsoever for Disney to even consider putting Rey in as a character in a future Star Wars project.
It's very stupid for many reasons to continue with Rey, but Disney is doing it because fucking up Star Wars is what they do best. It's always been the plan to continue Rey's story.
Last I spare about if he or she, or they, I don't know what gender Sparrow is, was saying there'll be stuff like Lego Star Wars or transition stuff to move into the new era where the sequel trilogy is decanonized.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Lego Star Wars or transition stuff to move into the new era where the sequel trilogy is decanonized.
What the fuck are you talking about?
At Star Wars Celebration 2023, Kathleen Kennedy's Viking funeral didn't happen. Predicted by Kamran Pasha. A Rey movie was announced, and Daisy Ridley walked out on the stage.
And so Sparrow says this was a tightly kept secret. This whole announcement was a tightly kept secret. The office is more than a little shocked about the Mangold, the Knight, which is this alleged Rey movie, and the Acolyte announcements. These things didn't seem to have any planning outside of Kennedy's inner circle.
Feminist Charmin Obaid-Chinoy is directing the Rey movie. Stephen Knight is writing the script. After Star Wars Celebration, there was the writer's strike delaying production. This has allowed Kamran Pasha time to deny the movie is happening. The fake Rey movie is another concept that did not originate from Sparrow. It started with Kamran. The non-existence of the Rey movie is essential to Kamran Pasha's con. He's always claimed the sequels are getting retconned. Don't be a black pill, Star Wars will get better. Have hope. But if Rey's story is continued, his message, his rumors, his Patreon falls apart. FTX, The Acolyte, the fake Rey movie, they start out as Kamran Pasha theories, which are then later supported by Sparrow. That is because Sparrow is a fake source. Kamran Pasha is Sparrow. And on June 6th, the biggest story from Sparrow breaks. George Lucas may be buying back Star Wars.
Due to the conversations about the sale of the studio, Disney's implemented an indefinite hold of all unproduced Lucasfilm projects. That includes the second season of Ahsoka, the Jedi Origins movie by James Mangold, and of course, the fake Rey movie, announced by Kathleen Kennedy. The projects aren't canceled, but development is being suspended until the future of Lucasfilm is settled. And of course, this would include The Acolyte, which Sparrow still does not see evidence for being a fully funded series.
Furthermore, the ancient Pasha method of storytelling really is in full force on this Patreon post.
Sparrow is hearing rumors inside the Lucasfilm office that there is a major Disney accounting scandal due to the off-book financial mismanagement, and that the bookkeepers are being tasked with covering up a multi-billion-dollar hole through complex accounting shams. By overhauling Hulu on the books, the transaction is hoped to paper over the mysterious black hole inside Disney's ledgers. A black hole that may very well be the FTX scandal. I've been positing since Bob Chapek was unceremoniously fired 10 days after FTX collapsed last year.
All of the Sparrow scoops are connecting. An FTX scandal, financial crimes by Disney, fake Acolyte show, fake Rey movie. This all needs to be covered up and sold to George Lucas himself.
And finally, in the midst of all this chaos, Kathleen Kennedy didn't show up in the office today. Sparrow, bitch.
Unlike some other con artists, there's no ambiguity to Cameron's Patreon post. He definitively predicts what will happen. Most of it can be easily debunked. George Lucas didn't buy back Star Wars. Months later, he's not in the discussion. That was all clickbait. Kathleen Kennedy's Viking funeral didn't happen. Kamran predicted that Kathleen Kennedy was going to be fired after Indiana Jones 5 flopped at the box office. Indiana Jones 5 flopped at the box office, but Kathleen Kennedy still remains at Lucasfilm several months after that. Kamran was wrong about The Acolyte. Disney has spent $49 million on pre-production. There's no indication the show is being canceled. There's nothing that supports the Rey movie isn't happening. When these projects are released, how is Kamran Pasha going to spin this? You can only tell a lie for so long. You can only spin a narrative so much until others start catching on, until it all blows up in your face. But when it does blow up in his face, will Kamran Pasha's patrons see Kamran for what he is, or continue to accept the Sparrow programming? On the next episode of The Sparrow Files, we will reveal how Sparrow's agenda is not just limited to Patreon. Kamran Pasha is aided by the popular YouTube channel Overlord DVD. We will divulge on how Doomcock plays a crucial role in the con. I'm Darth Melvin, leader of the Knights of Melvin, and this is the Sparrow Files.